Hey VC, yeah, I'm back again, and this time it's a competition entry. Yes, don't usually do these, but I thought I'd support this chap because he's a mighty fine, upstanding member of the vinyl community. It's Mr. Steve Whitty, and he has a competition for, I think it was in the end 130 subscribers, but it may be a different number. I can't remember. Um, Love his channel. It's a great channel. Go and watch it if you haven't. He really does deserve to have many, many more subscribers. Um, Now, the competition he set up was to nominate a band that haven't been entered into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I think on a side note, he added something about maybe nominating a band that didn't have a chance of getting into the Hall of Fame, just didn't have any hope whatsoever. Well, I kind of got two artists I wanted to choose for this. One probably might well have a slim or slender chance of getting into the Hall of Fame. If there was a British Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, then he would definitely be in there, but I'll leave that for another video if I get around to making it. But the band who definitely don't have a chance of making it into the Hall of Fame is this one. And this is... the Hypnotics. Yes. They're a band that I hold very dear to my heart. I absolutely love them. I think I have nearly everything they ever released on vinyl. Nearly. There's a couple of things that I'm missing. But I was really inspired to make this video because I found out 2 days ago that they're actually reforming. 20 years, just about 20 years after they last released anything, they have reformed. They are touring the UK. Looks like their albums are getting reissued, or there's some kind of vinyl archive being produced. I don't know what. Details are a bit sketchy at the moment, but just sterling news. I'm just so over the moon. It's brilliant. I've ordered my tickets to see them in Newport in Wales, because that's the closest gig that's taking place. Well, it's the gig that's taking place closest to where I live. Can't wait for that. Absolutely brilliant. Haven't seen them for 28 years, possibly. Whoa. Right. So the Hypnotics. Now, they were a band out of that rock and roll bastion of High Wycombe in Buckinghamshire in the UK. They were tied into the kind of... There was a late 80s sort of psychedelic rock revival. I mean, I guess, I don't know if it was massive. It wasn't really massive. I mean, the only people I can really think of off the top of my head was sort of Loop, Spaceman 3, who seemed to come from the same area of the country round. I think they shared members. I'm not sure. No, Hypnotics didn't, but Loop and Spaceman did, I think. Kind of that southeast of England thing area, and I loved all of them, but the Hypnotics are just brilliant. So started in 1985, but didn't get around to releasing a record until I think this was 87 or 88. Can't remember off the top of my head. 88. So the first release was this. This is Love in a Different Vein. And on the B-side is All Night Long. There's the B-side. This was released on Hipsville Records. So you've got... I think they originally had a different drummer, but he dropped out before they actually recorded anything. So you've got James Jones was a singer. You got Ray Hanson was the guitarist. I mean, if you, this picture should tell you the sort of thing to expect from the Hypnotics, really. Bass was Chris Dennis on this release, which, yeah, that one, Chris Dennis. And Mark Thompson was the drummer. Well, the original drummer anyway. I think original. So they're late 60s psych, heavy psych inspired, not sort of psych, kind of more by the MC5, bit of the Stooges chucked in, a lot of Hendrix, especially the heavier Hendrix stuff. Yeah, I guess it's that kind of era of American rock that really inspired them. Quite political. Well, they took the politics on board as well. We got a picture of the Black Panthers on the back. I just was. This was the first release, but this wasn't the first thing that I actually got. I got this slightly later. But the B-side is All Night Long, which they re-recorded, I think, on again after this. So this was the original version, though. So that was their first single. Now, the first thing I actually heard was this one. This was back in the late 80s. There used to be an indie chart in the UK, and it was actually an indie chart. The music was a genre chart rather than a record company fiddle-dee-dee fiddling it up chart, which is what it later became in the 90s. And now, well, there's an indie chart now. It's a joke. So this was the first one I got. This is Justice in Freedom, 12-inch. Just absolute. I think this is an incredible song. It's about 8 minutes long. And it's not overtly political, but it is political about how the law of the land only seems to support the rich in this country, doesn't support the common man. At this point, we'd got the bass player had changed, and we got Will Pepper, who joined on bass. But the rest of the lineup was the same. I absolutely adored them, and they were one of the few bands I actually joined the mailing list of. So I got bits and pieces. They put that out, Prophets of Energy, which was a little fanzine that they put out. I don't know why, but I got 2 copies of it for some reason. Then I got, what's this? I got another thing. I think this was a later handout. This was later, but I've stuck it in with the rest of them. So we got that. I think this was a Half Man, Half Boy release with gig list and first album. And I've also got this one, which is another mailing. So there we go. And this was later. This was around the release of the first album. So yeah. So this absolutely blew my mind when I first heard this. This came out in 1988. 1989? Hang on, let me just check. I've got to check this. 1989 on Situation 2. They've been touring pretty heavily, and I think I first saw them just after this was released. In the next, so around I think it would have been the spring of '89. From the spring of '89 to the spring of 1990, so I saw them 12 times around London. Basically once a month. I saw them as often as they played in London. I just absolutely infatuated. This came out at exactly the same time that I was getting into. I think it was the same year, '89. I bought Kick Out the Jams by the MC5, and I got Funhouse by the Stooges, and this was like going to see them. This is the closest thing I could get to going to see those bands in their heyday. Just absolutely righteous rock and roll. I mean, it's righteous. Just superb. So on this, you've got Justice and Freedom, which is nearly 9 minutes long. And then you've got two much shorter songs, Preaching and Rambling, Choose My Own Way. But those two songs are much shorter, but they're more high impact rather than the slow, drawn out blues psych of Justice and Freedom. So that was brilliant. Then later, I think, was this 1989 as well? Just checking this. Yep, 1989. They released this one, which is called Soul Trader. The riffs pouring out of this song are just incredible. I can put this on and still rock out to it. And then they got Earth Blues and a really good live cover of B.B. King's Rock Me Baby. Done a la the MC5. Terrific stuff. Right, so they were the first two singles they released. They got on tours with, I think, a lot of the Grebo bands. I don't know why they got them with the Grebo bands, because they weren't aligned with them, like Gay Bikers and Crazy Head. They toured. Who else did they tour with? They toured with the Cramps, who I saw them at Brixton Academy. They played a gig in Manor House, or Finsbury Park it might have been. I think it was Finsbury Park in London, and there I saw Alan McGee and Bobby Gillespie at the gig, who I couldn't go up and speak to him. I was in awe of Bobby Gillespie at the time. I just basically, another one I wanted to be. Right, so then in July 1989, they played, this was a Finsbury Park gig. So it must have been Manor House I saw Bobby Gillespie at. So 1989, July the 27th, they played. Oh no, this was Islington. I'm getting it all mixed up now. I've got a list of gigs I went to in the late 80s, early 90s somewhere, but I've mislaid it at the moment. But in Islington, on Thursday the 27th of July, they played a gig at the Powerhouse and they recorded it, and I was there. I still have the ticket stub. I'll talk about that in a minute, because I've got my second. So there's a t-shirt as well, and there's the chaps. Proud possessor of, this was only sold on the night as far as I know, so you can't get hold of that anymore. So this was a live album. I don't know if my voice is actually on this. I know I was shouting my head off, and I couldn't hear for about 3 days after this gig. It was so loud, just so loud. I think it is the loudest gig I ever went to. But you've got a 12-minute version of Justice and Freedom, which is just brilliant. Rock Me Baby makes another appearance, a different version of Rock Me Baby. And then you've got All Night Long, a longer version of this original 7-inch B-side. A song called Let's Get Naked, and a real Hendrix-inspired jam called Revolution Stone. This was again released on Situation 2. Nice labels. I should show the labels. I didn't pick them up. But I remember they mucked up Revolution Stone. I think somebody's string broke, so they had to do it again. So we got it twice. Well, nearly twice. I think they mucked up towards the end of it, so we got it twice. They did play more tracks, so they did play a longer list than that, set list than that. So maybe out there is a complete. I'm sure they played more tracks than that. They would have played at least 10 to 12 songs, so somewhere out there, there are tapes of this, I hope, still in existence. Maybe we'll get a release. Now, the Hypnotics are actually getting some recognition over in Seattle as well. Over there, they were getting lumped in with a lot of the grunge bands, and I know they toured with Mudhoney, they toured with Tad, they toured with Screaming Trees, so they were getting really noticed over there. Unfortunately, none of this turned into big sales or anything for them, and it all kind of fizzled out in the end, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So they were the first UK band to get a release on Sub Pop, and there it is. Different colour. I don't know why they went pink. So there's a UK one, which is a lovely red, and then they've gone pink on the US version. So this was on Sub Pop. Different label. And a different track listing. So it's a much longer album, this is. So you've only got 4 of the live tracks on here. But what they did was they got 4 of the tracks from their first 2 singles on the B-side. So you can see that you've got Soul Trader and Earth Blues off the Soul Trader 12-inch, and then they got the B-sides off the Justice and Freedom 12-inch as well. Absolutely magnificent stuff. Now, so after touring all of that, they came back to the UK and they recorded their first album. And the first single, in fact the only single of that album, was this one, which is Half Man, Half Boy. More of a no-nonsense riffing. Just played with such a... I just think they played with such a groove. It wasn't just like dull, thudding nonsense. It wasn't really funky, but it had that kind of swing. And then on here you got 9 Times and Testimonials B-sides. Kind of aping a lot of like those late 60s heavy rock albums that released in the States. Now at this point, Chris, what was his name? Chris Thompson, wasn't it? Mark Thompson. Mark Thompson left, and he was replaced by Phil Smith, who was a Canadian. I don't know how they met him. Got no idea how they met him. But he drummed with another band I loved from the LA 80s, the Bambi Slam, who I thought were a great band, great indie band in the UK. And then that led on to their first album, Come Down Heavy. And there's a statement of intent, if ever there was one. Again on Situation 2. This was a really nice package. I don't know how I got... I think... So not only you get a print of the front cover, which is staying put in the record. Got a quite a nice inner sleeve. And I think because I did buy this day of release, I even got a plastic bag. Look at that. With Come Down Heavy on it. I'm sure that will disintegrate at some point. Although, aren't they supposed to take hundreds of years to disintegrate? I don't know. But anyway, this is a magnificent debut album. I thought this was one of the best albums released in 1990, which is when it came out. We've got, so on here you've got Half Man, Half Boy. There's a lot of kind of feedbacky interludes on it, like All Messed Up, Unearthed. Got Release of Feeling. Resurrection Joe is an absolute storming track. The studio version of Revolution Stone's on here. Come Down Heavy, the title track, is just great riffing rock. So that was the end of kind of the first phase of the existence of the Hypnotics. So then they, prior to the release of the next album, they released kind of a stopgap single. It did actually make an appearance on the next album, but this was definitely an in-between release. This was Floating in My Hoodoo Dream, and this is a bit more Stones-ish, I guess. So it's got two mixes. It's got Floating in My Hoodoo Dream and then Hoodoo Reprise, Samidi's cookbook. And that is, they're kind of incorporating more of a Stones-ish kind of vibe to the proceedings. Maybe a little bit of the Doors as well. But yeah, again, another top-notch song. Played this to death. They then, before, around now, I think that was released in 1990. Pretty sure that was 1990. I'll show these as well. Yeah, I've got the CDs as well. So that's the Sub Pop CD of Liver Than God with the green cover. Same track listing as the vinyl. And there's my CD version of Come Down Heavy, which is the Japanese. It's actually the Japanese release of this. I don't think I've got the Obi in it. I think when I bought it, the Obi had gone missing. I'm not sure. Let's have a quick butcher's. So it's got. So there we go. It's got the lyrics on this one, but as you can see, it's got the lyrics in Japanese as well. So you can sing along to Half Man, Half Boy in Japanese if you so wish. Yeah, the Obi's just missing, so I don't know where that went. I don't think it was with it. I got this second hand, so I don't think it was with it when I bought it, to be honest. Right, and then the other release I got, well, it's not a proper official release. In 1990, August 1990, they played Reading Festival on the main stage. Same day as I think Nirvana played, I think. There was a day where there's a lot of Seattle bands, well, the grunge bands. I think it was Nirvana played, Babes in Toyland were on, there's a couple of others. But there we go, the Hypnotics played in 1990. Right, as I was saying, they played Reading Festival in August 1990, and there's the tape. Now I haven't got a track listing for this, but I'm sure it was made up. It was made up of tracks on the first album and various singles and stuff. They then went away for a bit and recorded with John Leckie to release their second album. Ahead of that, they released this as the first single. This is called Shakedown, with a great track on the B-side called Don't Let It Get You Down. Both of these made the album in the end. Slightly different sound they came back with. It was much more... Well, it was still real riffing rock, but they'd added horns and stuff, but in a kind of Stooges feel to it. It definitely wasn't that laid-back Stones feel, although they did use the kick horns. Are they called the kick horns? The kick horns who played on the Stones records. But they used them in a way more reminiscent of like Funhouse and that kind of stuff, more high energy. It definitely wasn't that laid-back Stones feel that during the early 70s. But you've got things like Shakedown and Coast to Coast, which was another single, which is the only 12-inch single of theirs that I'm missing. This album really got the attention of Chris Robinson from the Black Crowes, and he invited them on tour, I think in Europe, maybe also the States, I can't remember to be sure. At this point I didn't get a chance to see them again. at this point, I think this was released in 92, 93. I was just on the verge of moving to Japan, so I was a student, so I didn't have as much money to go and see bands and stuff. But I did manage to grab a copy of this. Another great album, great album, of which I also, of course, have the CD. There's the CD. Is this a Japanese copy as well, or is this American? Oh, it looks like the British one. Oh, 91. So they'd released. So they were recording quite regularly at this point. They then disappeared off the radar for a bit. I guess because they did go on tour with the Black Crowes a lot and various other bands. And they eventually came back. They left Situation 2 and Beggars, and they came back on American recordings. And this is their final album that they released. Never released on vinyl, so I'm kind of hoping this does get a reissue as part of the ongoing reunion. This is the Very Crystal Speed Machine. Much more Black Crowes inspired. Kind of that, them not quite as incendiary as before. Still a good album, but just not quite up to the first batch of records. And of course, I've got the obligatory t-shirt that went with this. I bought this later, but I really like that t-shirt. Really like it. They only released one song as a single off this, and it didn't get Heavy Liquid was the single off it. But you can see they're rocking a much more sort of 70s vibe rather than the late 60s vibe to it. Now, there were money problems at American recordings, and this kind of went belly up, this album. Didn't get hardly any promotion, and they kind of started to fizzle out. This was the last release they actually made, which was a real shame because I absolutely loved them. Then I didn't know this existed for years, but the final release didn't get out until about 1998, I think. I don't know how this ended up coming out. But after the release of Very Crystal Speed Machine, Will Pepper left. And they regrouped for one more song. Well, one more single, 7-inch single. I've only just got this. Managed to find a copy that wasn't an exorbitant price. And it's still Jim Jones, Ray Hanson, Phil Smith, with Jeremy Codlington joining on bass to replace Will Pepper. And here we've got a version of Earth Blues, which was on their second album, second 12-inch. And they did a new version of it, and it sounds really good. Slightly more laid back. And then the B-side is A Thing for You. Now on the insert, it's not a proper cover on this. It's kind of just like a folded cover. And on the insert that you get with the record, it said there was going to be a mini album on CD released. But that never happened. There's also been... and actually there is a trailer for it. Now I don't know whether this is real, but there was supposed to be a documentary about the Hypnotics release from their tours in the early 90s. There is on YouTube a trailer existing, but the film never got released. So that was it until the end of January, when all the plans are announced. So I think they've got a new bass player, a different. Will Pepper's not playing them with them, but Phil Smith, I'm pretty sure it's Phil Smith on drums, Ray Hanson on guitar, and Jim Jones on vocals. After the Hypnotics, Ray Hanson just disappeared from the music business until about 2015 when he came back with another band. I don't think they've released anything. Will Pepper went on to played bass in Hurricane Number One, Andy Bell's band, before he left to join Oasis. And I'm sure he joined another band after that, but I can't find any record of it. But I'm sure it's him on one. I'm going to have to go searching through my CDs. It wasn't Animal House, but there was another band right on the edge of my memory, and maybe I'll never find it. But anyway, I'm sure he played in other bands as well. But the person who had probably the most success definitely had the most success after the Hypnotics split up, was Jim Jones. He formed another band called Black Moses, who I've heard, and they were much more soulful. He went along a soul route, but still incorporating those heavy guitars. I think Black Moses, obviously, an Isaac Hayes reference there, incorporating the soul. That folded sort of around the turn of the millennium, and then he came back with an absolute storming rock and roll band called the Jim Jones Review. I've got one of their CDs somewhere, but they were a top-notch, hard-rocking rock and roll band, and this was back to the sort of 50 style rock and roll, but with a real attitude. If those original rock and rollers are around today playing this, you'd imagine that would be how they sounded. Brilliant band. Never got to saw them live either, which was a real shame, because I reckon they were storming. They would have been amazing. So there we have it. The Hypnotics. My dream entry for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Never get in there because they never sold anything. There you go. But I just thought they were wonderful, and I can't wait to see them again. Really, really looking forward to it. I just hope it doesn't get cancelled for any particular reason. Right, there we go. I hope you enjoyed this little foray into a fairly unknown British band who I just hold with the dearest memories of rocking out in London. Loved them. Well, thanks very much for joining me on that journey through a load of memories, and I'll see you all again soon, hopefully with a video on the other artist who actually does stand a chance of getting into the Hall of Fame. Anyway, thanks for that, and see you all again soon. Cheers, VC. Bye.